Hope y'all are enjoying my makeshift document cameras. Haha, I'm doing the best I can. It was too shaky yesterday, so this will just have to do, I guess. All right, so I'm looking at a line plot here on number 1. We know that the spaces between here, each tick mark tells us how many equal pieces that we have. So I see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 equal pieces. But I notice that I have a denominator of a 3 and a 2 and a 3 with my 6's. So that tells me that I have to create a common denominator. And since I have 6 equal spaces, then I'm going to want my denominator to be a 6. And so I need to make equivalent fractions here with these 3 with a common denominator of 6. That's going to help me when I either have to add or subtract later on. So this is the first step that I have to do when I have a line plot that has different denominators. So I know that I can do 3 times 2 is 6, so I'm going to multiply by 2 halves. 1 times 2 is 2, so I know that 1/3 is the same as 2/6. And if you watched Miss Williamson's math video last week on PBS, this is exactly what she was doing. She was creating equivalent fractions. Okay, when I have 1/2, I know that 2 times 3 is 6, so I'm going to multiply by 3/3. 1 times 3 is 3. And then 3 times 2 again is 6, so I'm going to multiply by 2 halves. 2 times 2 is 4. So now I have 1 6, 2 6, 3 6, 4 6, 5 6, and 1 whole. And we know that 1 whole could also be 6 6 if I needed to know that. It's another representation of 1 whole. So my question says, what is the total length? So when I see total, that indicates I'm probably going to be adding some things up in yards, because it says length of string in yards. So I'm looking for the total length in yards of all the strings that are 1/2 yard or less. So that word or means I do need to include all of the frequencies of 1/2. So I see that I have 1, 2, 3. So there's 2 ways I can do this. I can either do repeated addition. I could put 1/2 plus 1/2 plus 1/2, but if I notice I have 1/2, 1/3, and 1/6. So I'm going to use 3 6 instead of 1/2 to do my adding or multiplying. I could do 3 6 plus 3 6 plus 3 6, or I could take 3 6. I'll write it down both ways so you can see. So I've got 3 6 plus 3 6 plus 3 6. I'm writing down 3 because I have 3 x's. That means that there's a frequency of 3 for 1/2. There's only 1 with 1/3, but since I'm adding with a like denominator, I'm going to use 2 6. And then with 1/6, I have 2 x's, so I have a frequency of 2 there. So I'm going to do 1/6 plus 1/6. So I can do it this way. Or again, since in 5th grade we want to be efficient, quick and accurate, I could do 3 times 3 6 plus, of course we just have the 1 2 6 plus 2 times 1 6. They're going to give me the same amount. So by doing that, I know I've got 3 6 9, so that gives me 9/6 plus 2/6. And then I have 1 2 plus 2 6, and if I'd multiplied it, I'd be the same thing because we multiply straight across, and we put 1s under there so we don't forget to go straight across and not do 3 times 6 and 3 times 3. It's just 3 times 3. Now I'm going to add those up. I've got 6, so I've got 9 plus 2 is 11. 11 plus 2 is 13. So depending on if it was a multiple choice question on TCAP or next year when you take it, it could be represented as 13/6, or they could have you look for a mixed number. Okay, so there's a couple ways you can do that. We can divide, which is 13 divided by 6. You know, you could do that over here. We know that 6 goes into 13 2 whole times. I subtract my 12. I have 1 left. My remainder becomes my numerator, and my divisor is my denominator. So I could do it that way. Or for those who struggle with that, we know that 6 6 is 1 whole, so I could pull that out 1 time. Okay, pull it out another time. That gives me 12, and 13 minus 12 is 1/6. So here I have 2 and 1/6. Either way, I get 2 and 1/6 yards. All right, number 2. Slide this down. Hope I don't drop it. All right, number 2, I have brackets, I have parentheses, and I have numbers on the outside. Well, we know with order of operations, we have PEMDAS, we have parentheses, exponents, multiply, divide, add, or subtract. Okay, we know in 5th grade, we don't have our exponents, so I'm going to start with my parentheses. And since I have brackets, they act as another set of parentheses, so I have to do everything inside of here first. And in these brackets, I have 2 sets of parentheses, so I have to do those first. So I'm going to rewrite it as I go. So I've got 9 plus 1 is 10, plus 3 plus, or times 3 plus 2 is 5. And then I'm going to divide by 5. I'm still inside a set of parentheses or brackets here, so I have to do this before I divide by 5. If not, I'm not going to get the right answer. So I've got 10 times 5 is 50. Then I'm left with the last step of dividing it by 5. And 50 divided by 5 is 10. All right, write an expression for the following, the difference. So I'm going to underline some key words here. I'm looking at the difference of, so I'm looking for here, difference of the product of 5 and 7 and 10. So what it's telling me is I have to do this before I can find the difference between 10, because I've got to find the product before I can find what it means to be the difference of this and this. So I'm looking for the difference of the product of 5 and 7 and 10. We know product means multiply, so that means I would write 5 times 7. Difference means subtract. Then I'm going to subtract 10. Now on this one, we could have it with or without parentheses because order of operations says I would multiply. Back up here in the previous problem, says I would multiply first anyway. So you can write that one with or without your parentheses. All right, rounding. All right, rounding to the nearest whole number. I'm looking right here at my 4. I see a 5 next to it, so 5 or more says raise the score. It's going to change my 4 to a 5, but I don't just write my 5. I keep everything before it, so my whole number would be 95. When I move to the tenths place, I keep everything before the tenths place. And now I have a 5 and there's a 6 next to it. My rule says 5 or more, raise the score. 4 or less, let it rest. 6 is more than 5. So I'm going to raise the score and I'm going to change my 5 to a 6. Again, when I move to the next place value, I go back to my original number and I write everything before the hundredths place. So I'm going to keep 94 and 5/10. Now I have a 6 and it's got a 1 next to it. 4 or less says let it rest. It means I'm going to leave it alone and I'm going to keep it a 6. So when I round that to the nearest hundredth, I'm going to have 94 and 56 hundredths. All right, last but not least, 23, or 945 divided by 23. 943 is my dividend. That's what I'm splitting up, and my divisor is 23. So I'm looking to see if I round 23 to 20 and 94 to 90, I know that 20 can go into 90 about 4 times because 20 times 4 is 80, but 20 times 5 is 200. So over here I'm going to check out 23 times 4 and make sure it works. I've got 3 times 4 is 12. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 92. 92 is less than 94 because I already know 23 is bigger than 9, so it can't go there. I've got to look at 94. So I'm going to put my 4 over my 4. And I'm going to write 92, and I'm going to subtract 4 minus 2 is 2. I'm going to bring down my 5. Now I know that 23 is super duper close to 25, so it can only go in there one time. I'm going to subtract 23, and I'm going to get a remainder of 2. Nice work. See you next time.